Hi, Poof. There he goes. Yeah. Hold on. Live streaming. Would you like to say hi to the world?
Hi.
I mean, I'm not pointing it at you. I'm just...
Hi, peoples.
It's a friend of mine. What am I trying to show? Nothing in particular. Just testing out the live streaming feature on YouTube here. So, just, I don't know. Maybe my fish and shrimp would be something to look at. It says I have a poor connection, which is not to be unexpected, considering I am in a basement surrounded by concrete. Is it good quality? Well, it's good to know it's good quality, at least. I don't know how great of quality, it could possibly be, considering, I'm in the basement, like I was saying, surrounded by concrete, and this is not exactly the best spot for connection of my router, or my wireless access point. And, of course, there's a squeaky chair to you. Well, thank you for letting me know. Now, what would be nice is if this app actually let me rotate. Oh, say hi to my cameraman.
I could probably go run and see myself.
Yeah, you probably could.
Yeah, the latency is bad enough. I heard myself scream earlier.
Oh.
Listen.
Oh, someone says hi. So.
Hi, person. I don't know the name. You just said somebody. Or is that literally a name? Hi, somebody.
True Onion says shalom.
Hi, True Onion. No numbers? Nice.
I think one of my friends is live streaming the stream in the house as we stream the stream.
He is.
So, okay, this is going to be annoying. McFartlane, why don't you stop? Otherwise, everyone's going to have to hear me call you that.
Hey, scissors.
Thanks, Moet. Am I pronouncing that right? Oh, you need scissors?
Yeah.
Just get the shears from upstairs in the kitchen.
There's only like a 3-second delay. No, more like 5.
Titan the pufferfish. Actually, I do plan on going over to the pet store where he's located at sometime soon during the crayfishing season. Titan is at a place called Pets, etc. And I go there during the crayfishing season because I can collect them in the wild and feed him some nom-noms, which he absolutely loves. Now, normally you can't collect the crayfish around here because they're rusty crayfish and they are an invasive species, but I made sure to get permission from my local conservation officers for the Department of Natural Resources before I did anything, because it normally is further into summer, like midsummer, when the crayfish are pretty plentiful. But I did happen to come across a rusty crayfish a week or two ago. Well, yeah, I mean, you gotta make sure you follow the laws. There's a lot of invasive species, and I wouldn't want to do anything that would upset the DNR, because Truth be told, the DNR, the conservation officers, have a lot more power than normal police officers in certain cases. If they catch you doing anything wrong, I mean, they can take away all your fishing equipment. They can take away your aquariums, revoke your fishing license. I mean, they could take your boat, your truck, anything they see fit, depending on how severe the crime is. Now, they basically told me, as long as I don't breed the crayfish and I don't transfer ownership or put them in another body of water, it should be completely fine, because I'm essentially doing them a favor by getting them out of the ecosystem, because the Rusties here in Illinois have decimated about 20 or so different native species here in Illinois, and it's gotten pretty bad, but they are quite tasty. And I think Titan agrees. So I'm actually hoping to contact the owner of Pets Etc. to do an interview with them about Titan, because I noticed a lot of people seem to really love Titan. He is a goofy pufferfish, and he is a lot of fun. He really is like a puppy, because people don't seem to realize how intelligent some fish can be. A porcupine puffer is very much capable of recognizing people they like, as well as people they come in contact with very commonly. So he knows whenever I come into the pet store that I'm going to bring him a rusty crayfish to eat, and he goes absolutely bonkers. So last time I did it, I didn't get to film it, but we opened up the top to give him the crayfish, but he splashed water everywhere. Let's see. Hold on. I just saw the question. Let me just open up the chat again. Do I have any species of piranha or shark? I only deal with freshwater species, and it's kind of a misleading title to call certain species of freshwater sharks sharks, because from what I understand, they're not true sharks. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but I don't own anything aggressive. I actually breed blue Moscow guppies, and those are the boys, and over here are the girls. And there's two boys that I have selected to breed with the girls. Over here is the fry tank. Piranhas, I've never done anything with piranhas. But I do have little Poof, my pufferfish. There he is. He's my little poofler fish. He's a good fish. I originally got Poof because I had a pest snail problem. And, when pest snails breed, they breed insanely quickly. That's why you see all these dead these shells right here. These are from Titan's snacks, I guess you'd call them. And Titan has been working on reducing the population. Starting a shrimp colony. So, starting with, let's say Neocardinia davidi shrimp, which is what I deal with, which would be the species of cherry shrimp, and other shrimps of the same species have different color morphs, would be my expertise. And one thing to note, there's also another name they go by, Heterotropa, I believe. Heterotropa and Neocardinia davidi are actually the same thing. There was an issue because multiple people in different parts of the country discovered the species, but it wasn't until recently they found out, oops, it's the same exact thing. And in this case, it defaults to whoever discovered it first and named it first, which would happen to be Neocardinia davidi. So, those are what I specialize in. Down here, I have my Dream Blue Velvets, and it's about to be tank cleaning day soon, so I got to get some of the algae buildup off of the walls here. So, starting out breeding a shrimp colony is not as hard as you might think. I personally recommend starting out with ghost shrimp. And the reason I say ghost shrimp, or in some cases they're called glass shrimp, and there's actually some in here somewhere, is because they're very, very inexpensive. So if you do make a mistake, you're only out a few cents. Yep, not even $1. And if you can breed those, you can breed cherry shrimp. Simple as that. But the main thing to keep in mind is that you really need the tank to be cycled. Without a properly cycled tank, and I mean fully cycled, no ammonia, no nitrites, and make sure the nitrates never go out of check. So below, for shrimp, I would say anything 10 parts per million is high. You want to keep it to 5 parts per million or below in nitrates. And that'll be the good starting base for you for Neocardinia davidi shrimp or ghost or glass shrimps. The next thing you want to keep in mind is these types of shrimp eat very heavy amounts of biofilm. And you need a lot of surface area for biofilm to grow on in order to continuously have a supply of it for them to graze on. That's why I have hornwort, which is this plant that's everywhere. And the hornwort does a great job of sucking up nitrate, but it also provides a ton of surface area for your shrimp to find biofilm on to graze with. On top of that, at a certain point when your colony of shrimp begins to be too big to have, in order for the amount of biofilm you have, you need to add supplemental food. And what I have are these little things. They're Veggie Pellets. There's no big manufacturer who makes these, but you can find them on eBay or even from Aquatic Arts. They are a special blend of high calcium vegetables that will help in the process of creating the exoskeleton of your shrimp. Another thing to keep in mind is shrimp tend to prefer harder water as opposed to soft water. They need it for their exoskeleton. But possibly the hardest thing about starting a new colony is bringing them into your tanks. Because when you have a shrimp that was born and raised in someone else's tank, they're used to that set of water parameters. And keep in mind specifically the general hardness. If you bring a shrimp into your tank and your tank is significantly softer, their exoskeleton becomes too malleable and too soft for them to crack it in the center. And I think I have a shrimp that's a good example of it. You'll see right there, there's a little white spot in the center. That shrimp is going to molt soon. And it'll crack that spot in the back and then hop out of its old exoskeleton. But if your tank is too soft compared to where it originally came from, that part will never crack and they'll never be able to exit their exoskeleton or they'll die of stress. Now, if your water is too hard, on the other hand, then the exoskeleton becomes too rigid and strong, and they won't be able to crack it because of that, and they'll die in their exoskeleton because of that. So that is one thing to keep in mind of. That's why it's important to drip acclimate any invertebrates that come into your systems, because it gives them a chance to adjust to the chemical parameters that are different, be it the pH, the hardness, the TDS, etc., without shocking their system. This little guy is really close to the point of molting. I want to catch him in the act, but I've seen it a few times and been just a little too slow to catch him on camera. But basically, make sure there's enough surface area of stuff like hornwort for biofilm. Make sure your tank is fully cycled and to acclimate them slowly. And once the colony gets large enough, give them supplemental amounts of food with high calcium. That'll really get your shrimp colony going, and you should have a reproduction very soon afterwards, after they've completely adjusted to your tanks. Now, I know there was another question in here. Accidentally added piranha to my aquarium. The next day, most of my innocent small fishes found in pieces. Shift from piranhas to another aquarium. Yeah, that tends to be an issue with a lot of aquarists. I personally experienced this issue. Thanks to my friend who decided he had to buy a fish. And he didn't have his tank set up properly, but it was the only fish. And it was a Pictus catfish. And here's the thing. Never take the advice of the people at the pet store. Do your own research, for sure, before ever considering putting another aquatic species in with your little buddies, because the Pictus catfish, although we told was a community kind of fish, was very vicious. It annihilated almost everything. We removed it and returned it the next day. But that was a pretty harsh reality and hard lesson to learn. Have I ever tried keeping some of the bigger freshwater puffers like Fahaka? No, I have not tried Fahaka puffers. I do have a friend over at a local Petco who is actually studying aquatic biology to become part of the Department of Natural Resources, one of their aquatic biologists, and he does have a Fahaka puffer. I've seen some pictures of his puffer, and it's absolutely magnificent, and they are wonderful little buddies. But for me, I just stick with the little guy here, little poof. But most puffers are known for having like unique personalities and just being kind of fun to watch. I got Poof here as a utilitarian fish, like I said, to try and clear the pest snails away, and he does a decent job at it. But he's very gentle with fish. That's why you see him in the tank with my blue Moscow guppy fry, because he doesn't attack them. He does a really good job at being nice, and yeah, tank cleaning day has got to be tomorrow, because the glass on the walls are really starting to build up with some stuff. But I use a metal algae scraper, which if you have a glass aquarium won't damage the aquarium, the glass. So don't use a metal algae scraper on acrylic aquariums though, because that will scratch it. They make different materials for acrylic aquariums, but honestly, glass is, what you want to go for in the first place. Let's see. There's one of my neon yellows down there. This is one of the tanks that had a cycle crash a while ago, but everything's back up and good now, and I found out why these little guys weren't doing so well. And they're really good at hiding, because there's actually a number of hiding spots in here, like behind the sponge filter, and there's shrimp tubes that they like to hide in. And I've got a lot of air pumps. One of these days I'm going to have to reorganize this room a little better and redo all the air lines, because there are hoses and cables going everywhere. So how often do I clean my tanks? I make sure to clean the tanks at least once a week. Certain tanks, like this one, you notice the glass is a lot cleaner. I actually have a specific fish to do that. There's a bushy nose pleco in each side, and keep in mind these are different than regular plecos, so these guys don't get big. In fact, I can probably show you Peaches. That's Peaches right there, and that's as big as he gets. He won't get any bigger, and he does a really good job. Ooh, there's a lot of babies in there today. I gotta scoop them out and put them in the fry tank. But in between cleanings in this tank, I use my electric gravel vacuum, and you can see there's a lot of poop that gets collected. And in between the week, I clean the substrate, because plecos poop a lot, and of course the boys poop a lot too. The boys are getting their color. They're getting a little raggedy. The problem with blue Moscow guppies at some point is they may suffer from the same condition as rose petal betas, where their fins get too big and they nip their fins to shorten them a little bit to make it easier to swim. Kind of the curse of beauty, unfortunately. And there was another question. Let me bring up the chat menu here. The app's being finicky. Show the messages. There we go. How often do I clean the sponge on sponge filters? Well, that kind of depends. One thing to look at is the amount of bubbles and water flow coming out of the top spigot here. Once you notice the amount of bubbles coming out is not nearly as fast as it should be, it's time to take the sponge filter out and give it a good rinsing, preferably with your tank water. So you would take like a bucket that you would put tank water in, remove it. You know, you don't want to do it in the tank, and you would squeeze the sponge filter, and you'd be surprised how much detritus gets stuck on these things. Because sponge filters, alongside biological filtration, do provide excellent mechanical filtration, but as you can imagine, as detritus builds up, that will eventually prevent the flow of water and air going through the system. So you'll notice the restriction. So if you compare from a new sponge filter, which should be very bubbly, to a sponge filter that needs to be cleaned, the one that needs to be cleaned will not have a lot of bubbles coming out. And that's at the point where you should take it out and do a good rinsing and then put it back in. So it basically kind of just depends on the individual system. Hunting crayfish. Yes, I can give you tips on that. So I actually have a video that I'm going to do coming up soon, where I'm going to test the water parameters of the lake that I go at, where I catch the rusty crayfish that I get with the API Master Test Kit, and it'll be fun because you'd be surprised how awful the conditions in the lake are compared to a fish tank. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is crayfish in the wild tend to have a lot of exhaustion. So they're not nearly as spunky as a crayfish in an aquarium because they have to hunt for their food. They have to live in water conditions that are not optimal. And if you really want to get them good, you got to go when the sun is down, because they'll tend to recede near the shoreline where it's easily visible. Now, one thing that works really well is a flashlight. Now, when you have the light on the crayfish, they're going to notice it. And this works. What I'm about to show you will work for just about any fish. If you can do this, and warning, there is going to be a strobing light, so if you have epilepsy, look away. But if you change the setting like this, where it blinks a lot, it stuns them because it visually impairs them temporarily. And it works on just about any fish. So if you're having a hard time catching a fish and you have a strobing light, the cones and rods in their eyes, if they're similar to kind of our eyes, because we have cones and rods that are just for light, it'll go back and forth so fast that they can't, see what's going on. And this temporarily blinds them, so you're able to really just get in there and pull them out. Now just basically grab them in the center, in between their tail and head. And you pull them out, their claws can't go back far enough to grab you. They'll only come back like halfway, and you won't be pinched. Crayfish can be kind of weird. Some people consider them like the insects of the sea. But, everyone's got a preference. Some crayfish are kind of pretty. I mean, there's the electric blues and the specter whites. But the wild crayfish are green around here. The rusties are green with a little spot on their back. But I'll go in the lake and I'll pluck them out by hand and get like 20, 30 of them in a single night within like an hour or two. Because they're pretty heavily populated where I'm at. And you just get in the water. You got to be willing to get a little dirty. Oops. Found some more neons. But you got to be willing to get in the water, and you just basically bend down and grab them. And when you grab them, push down on their back, and that'll prevent them from moving. Crayfish can only move backwards quickly because they use their tail and whip it very strongly to get away from predators. And as long as the direction that they are facing is actually away from you and their backs are facing towards the shore, they can only come closer to you. So if you push down on their back and grab like right in the center of their body, you should be able to pull them out pretty easily. Because wild crayfish, they're hungry. They've probably gone a while without food. They're exhausted from evading predators. And the water conditions in the lakes really aren't as good as our tanks. So once you get them, get in the water with them and you stun them with the light, it's easy pickings. It's really not hard. It only takes a few tries to get it. And then you'll be plucking out crayfish like a pro. But yeah, maybe one of these days I'll actually have a video of myself plucking out the crayfish, and I'll kind of show how to go and do it. But once they get in the aquarium and they get adjusted to my water, they generally perk up a lot more. They love frozen sweet peas. They go nuts for them. And it's really good for them because they need a fibrous diet. And the sweet peas have a good amount of calcium to help with their shells from molting. So they'll become harder to catch when they're in their aquariums because they'll be properly fed, have no predators, and they won't be in bad water conditions either. Wonder if I can get my vampire shrimp to come out. I have a vampire shrimp that hides in the log. Hi, mama fish. Oh. Looks like one of the girls may have nipped your fin there. Any kind of heater. I specifically use Aqueon Pro heaters. I'll answer that question about the crayfish harming each other in a minute. I have used a number of different heaters. I say stay away from glass heaters. Glass heaters have a tendency of failing, and when they do, it can be catastrophic. They have, I forget what's inside of them most of the time, but when they break, it can be really bad. And it can release a bunch of stuff in the water, and you don't want that. Aqueon Pro heaters have a solid aluminum core, and they are very hard to break. You can have them outside of water, and they got a sensor that if it gets too hot, will actually turn the device off to prevent it from overheating and breaking. But on top of that, because it's a solid aluminum core, you don't have to worry about the contents like in a glass heater breaking. And because it's all metal, it's not going to shatter or crack or anything. And what's nice about them is I can adjust the temperature to suit the specific needs of an individual tank's species. So it's all around a winner in my book. You can get them very inexpensively on eBay. I mean, at the pet store or even Walmart, you pay like $15-20 for a heater that's like a cheap glass one that's not adjustable. For the same price, you go on eBay, you get yourself an Aqueon Pro brand new. I'll answer that question as well in just a minute. Can crayfish harm other ones? Yes, crayfish are territorial. That's why having too many of the same sex in one tank can lead to a lot of deaths between each other. What I do, or what I did, got my box of mysteries here, is I got them little homes. This is just PVC tubing, and I got a ton of these. And I put them in a big tank so that each crayfish can claim its own territory and hopefully prevent hunting each other down. This can backfire, as some crayfish might want the same spot as each other, but it's kind of something you just got to keep an eye on. If you have a ton of them in one tank, they can't form a hierarchy, and sometimes they just do better with no places to hide. And, you just got to kind of keep an eye on them. As for how do I do water changes without sucking up the shrimp or fry, I use a regular, well, this is my Python gravel vac, but you'll notice I have a fine mesh media bag over it. And this fine mesh media bag allows water to flow through, but the mesh is so fine that the shrimps and the fry cannot get sucked through it. So I just have this on, and you can buy these really cheap, like 5 of them for like $3 on eBay. So yeah, just a cheap media bag does really good at preventing sucking up small shrimps, shrimplets, and fries. Actually, I got something new that makes water changes a lot easier. So this is the hose that the water comes through, and normally I just have this right here and just water comes out, but it was too much pressure coming out of the jet of water at one time, so I got this, and it disperses with more displaced amounts of water. I can have the same water flow without having like a giant jet of water coming out, you know, shocking everything with too much pressure in one spot. So it's a really gentle water flow while still maintaining a good flow rate. So that way I can do all the water changes very quickly, because I have one hose specifically for filling, one hose with the Python specifically for the tanks that are on the ground here, because the tanks that are up here, I'll use my standard siphon, which just uses physics and gravity to clean, and it works great for that reason. And I've got it going out. There's a little outlet down there, but it doesn't work with tanks down here, so I have to use the suction from the Python to clean the tanks down here. So it's a little bit of a jimble jamble, you know, going back and forth, but water changes are generally pretty quick, despite the fact that there's, well, currently 5 tanks in here. There used to be 7. I just sold one of my tanks because I had one tank that was given to me from a family friend who was moving and couldn't take their stuff. I made sure all their fish got to a place where they could be adopted and go to another loving family, but I also had the tank just kind of sitting there not doing much. And then I used to have a 30-gallon terrarium right there, but, you know, I got that for free as well, and I'm like, I don't need a terrarium, so I sold that as well. But there will be something replacing those tanks up here, and I don't know what I'll be doing quite yet, but I'm going to try to do something interesting. I don't know, I might try different color shrimp. I do plan on having at least one more shrimp tank to breed Bloody Mary cherries, which should be fun, because Bloody Mary cherries should be the reddest of all cherries, because it's not just their exoskeleton that's red, it's their organs as well. So that should be fun. There's my blue Moscow boy, kind of swimming it up. He's starting to get his color. Well, anywho, guys, thanks for joining me on my first actual live stream. My phone is almost out of battery, so I gotta let you guys go. But hey, thanks for joining me for this little test here. And it was fun answering you guys' questions. So I'll see you guys sometime soon with some new videos. Thanks, man. Alright, guys. Get some good sleep if you're going to sleep, or if you're just waking up, good morning to you, and depending on wherever you are. And as always, stay fishy.